People who used to not believe in ghosts but do now. What experience changed your mind? So in high school, I worked kids' birthday parties. The place was basically a giant gym, and gymnastics/dance classes were also held there. One day I came in and one of the girls I worked with, who was very spiritual and very religious, was totally freaked out. During the gymnastics class she taught that morning, one of the kids was staring up at the ceiling. When she asked the kid what he was doing, he said, "There's a little boy up there," and pointed at the ceiling. Strange, but whatever, kids are weird. Later, two girls who were working a birthday party before mine came out of the gym and were visibly shaken. A pair of 5-year-old twins went down a slide and then stared at the ceiling. They both said that there was a little boy up there, in the same spot on the ceiling that the kid from the morning gymnastics class said. We all went in and inspected the ceiling. Of course, it was a regular gray warehousey ceiling. But we were all super freaked out at that point. During my party, I was pushing a little boy on the giant swing we had in the gym. He too began to stare at the ceiling. He said directly to my face, "Hey, there's a little boy up there." When we told all of our coworkers and managers about the 3 separate experiences we had today with children from different parties and classes seeing a little boy on the ceiling, the next day we had downtime between parties and nobody was in the gym. There are cameras in the gym that allow parents to see their children playing from the lobby. My manager called us out of the break room. "Guys, check this out." We come out and see the screen, which is streaming from the gym, showing that the giant swing was going back and forth. Nobody's in there. It's just the swing going. I like to think that the ghost was truly a little boy who just wanted to play, and he finally got to go on the swing. Could be worse. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. I'm still not sure if I believe, but there have been some weird things in my life that I can't explain. When I was 5 years old, I woke up in the night and my grandma was standing at the end of my bed, wearing a teal blue skirt and a matching blouse. I remember that it was summer and the sky was still light, but not light enough for me to read, so I guess it was about 9 p.m. I sat up, she put her fingers to her lips, and I rubbed my eyes a couple times. 'Cause sleepy, you know? And when I looked back, she was gone. I just snuggled back under my covers thinking how nice it was to see her because I hadn't seen her for ages, and I hoped that she would still be there when I woke up. Next morning, my house was eerily quiet. My mom was in a worse mood than normal, but she had been crying, so I asked her what was wrong. My grandma had died the night before. She had been crossing a road before her bingo turned out at 8:30 p.m., about 60 miles away from where we lived. She had a massive brain hemorrhage in the middle of the road and didn't even make it to the other side, let alone to my house 60 miles away. She was wearing a teal blue skirt and matching blouse. I do gotta say, kids have a tendency to rewrite memories based on what they learn later. That could be what's happened here, at least when it comes to the clothes and everything. It's totally possible that OP was, had some sort of visual hallucination when they were going to sleep, or they woke up from being asleep and saw something. But when it comes to kid testimonies, I don't know. I'm just not too inclined to believe, at least. Story 3. My wife and I swear that our daughter used to talk to ghosts when she was a toddler. She was an only child at the time. First instance I remember was her telling me that she was talking to Nana. That's what I called my grandmother, who passed about 15 years before my daughter was born. My daughter was young, and so I hadn't even talked about Nana to her. So I showed her a picture and asked who she spoke to. There were 4 women, 3 of which I didn't even know. But without hesitation, she pointed to my Nana. Okay, no biggie. Some months later, my wife and I are trying for baby number 2. After my wife gets pregnant, my daughter is sitting next to her on the couch and puts her head on her belly and says, "Mommy, there's a baby in there." Okay, maybe that's a coincidence. She overheard us saying something. A few weeks later, my wife miscarries. Maybe my daughter picked up on our sadness, who knows? But she again puts her head on her stomach and says, "Mommy, there's no baby in there anymore." Then, several months and one more very early miscarriage later, my daughter tells us, "I was talking to my brother last night and he said that my sister is coming to live with me soon." Again, she's an only child and had no living brother. We were still trying at this point, but had not taken any tests. We picked one up that night and, sure enough, pregnant. When time came to reveal the gender, I wasn't even interested. My daughter had already said it was a girl. Sure enough, I have 2 daughters. Now this one I like. Kids are creepy and say weird stuff all the time, and when they make a little too much sense, that's super cool. OP, let me know when your daughter starts reading palms. I'll take you up on that. Story 4. Once when I was in university, I went to go see my therapist, whom I'd been seeing twice a week for about 5 months. On this day, he was uncharacteristically quiet, and I asked him if he was all right. He said he was fine, and we continued through what would be one of our most breakthrough sessions. A lot of repressed memories came up through it that have helped me to heal. At the end of the session, I asked him again why he was acting differently today than other days. He said when I walked in, I was accompanied by a warrior-like person. He said he had the overwhelming feeling to perform as best as he professionally could that day, and that he got the sense that this warrior had fought a lot of battles to protect me. This would seem coincidental, except for 10 years later, I was living on the other side of the world. I had a Puerto Rican neighbor I would occasionally see, and eventually got pretty close with him and his family. One day as I was walking by, he kinda gets quiet and weird, and then says in broken English, "Do you know there's a soldier who follows you around?" I knew instantly who he was talking about. In both instances, the warrior/soldier was described the same. Just over 6 feet, blonde, curly hair wearing primitive warrior clothing, and strangely, a white guy. Neither of these people could have known that my closest brother, who passed away at 14, was over 6 feet tall with blonde, curly hair. And he was always my protector. Whether this is something spiritual or just a coincidence, I don't know. It made me emotional. Sometimes it's nice to just abandon all suspicion and just believe that, yeah, there's someone out there watching over you. Story 5. My girlfriend's grandfather's ashes were on a little shelf in the living room, right next to a very solid/heavy angel statue. Well, one weekend she and I are fooling around on the living room couch, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the angel statue fly off the wall, accompanied with a deep grunt. Now, when I say this thing flew off the wall, I'm talking 7 or 8 feet of air before landing on the hardwood and leaving a dent where the wing hit. Even if this thing had fallen off the wall, it would have dropped straight down, not soared with force. We both stood there in shock, and I whispered if she had heard the grunt as well, to which she agreed. So we both booked it for the day. Well, that night at dinner, we told her parents what happened, leaving out the naughty bit, and Megan's younger sister burst into tears, saying she had seen a dark figure at the foot of her bed the last couple of nights, but didn't want anyone to think that she was crazy. Grandfather that died had mental health issues that caused a lot of pain. Welp, after that day, I was a believer. Story 6. When I was about 10 to 14, I had terrible insomnia. I would imagine things and felt incredibly unsafe, as though I was being watched, although I never admitted this to anyone. I began only sleeping on the couch with my back against the wall and had to have the TV on or some sort of light. I missed an immense amount of school because of this, so my mom had me see a neurologist. The neurologist diagnosed me with some things, but the crazy part was during my sleep study, I slept amazingly well. No issues at all, and slept in the real bed. Eventually, I got transferred to a children's hospital, and speaking to the doctor, I explained I would see things and felt uncomfortable. They had thought I was experiencing sleep paralysis. When they told my mom, she went ghost white. She pulled me aside and explained that she was experiencing things too. She described in detail what I was seeing. That evening, she approached my brother and asked broad questions. "Oh, do you have anything weird happen at home?" etc. He also described what we experienced. It was then I realized we must have paranormal activity, and I've believed it ever since. When we moved out of that house, all my sleep issues abruptly stopped, and I haven't experienced it since. Paranormal activity or carbon monoxide leak. Take your pick. Story 7. I still don't believe in ghosts, but I did have a strange experience. I had a cat who I found in a ditch many years ago. She was cute and I pet her, so she followed me back down the train tracks about a mile to my home. I opened the door for her and in she went. She was offered the opportunity to go back out and did for a moment, but then came back in. She was mine forever. I've had many pets over the years and loved them all, but this one was different. She wanted to be near me all the time. I often said that I'd never had a cat who made me feel like my personal space was being violated before. She followed me up to bed every night and purred me to sleep. She died fairly quickly. I barely even had a chance to say goodbye. I knew she was ill, having been diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, which cat owners will know it's not a good thing to hear. Although progress has been made, ask your vets about the pens. They've worked miracles for my current cat who also has it. They vomit their food up and waste away slowly, eventually succumbing to either congestive heart failure or kidney damage. She had taken a turn for the worse, and I thought her treatment wasn't working. On examination, they found tumors in her stomach and liver. She had been dealt a mortal blow and was only going to suffer harder and harder. In the most painful one I've ever had to deal with, I put her down, and she even meowed one last time before the end. I forgot to mention that this cat was also the most talkative I've ever had. She frankly wouldn't shut up. I buried her in the yard to keep her close and try to go to sleep, completely beside myself with grief. As I lay down, I heard something familiar. I live in an old house and my bedroom doesn't have a door, so I installed one of those plastic sliding ones. The slats it's made of make a telltale clacking sound when they're disturbed, like they did when a cat pushes in between them and the door frame. I heard this, and a moment later, I felt the foot of my bed compress, and could feel the mattress deform around my feet, up beside my legs and roughly to my hips. I looked, and no cat. I don't know how to explain this. I don't believe in ghosts, and I'm sure grief can cause some pretty significant psychological disturbances. A quick perusal of my post history will show I am anything but cuddly. But I was absolutely in the kind of deep grief where one would expect that, as I loved that cat more than basically anything else. Even typing this now, years later, is making my eyes well up with sadness for my lost friend. I could write off the sound of the plastic slats as a breeze or a hallucination. Older members of my family said they saw my father after he died, and I've read about grief-induced hallucinations before. But to feel my mattress deform like that, in exactly the way she used to circle my feet and come up beside me, I don't know what to think. Story 8. Most of my family is extremely religious and believe in ghosts wholeheartedly. Most of them claimed to have seen something paranormal at some point in their lives. I wasn't very religious, and I always thought to myself, if I haven't seen it, then it's not real. That changed during my senior year in high school. I was dog-sitting at my great-aunt's house while she was out of town for a few days. A little after midnight, I was watching a movie, and my aunt's dog starts barking like crazy and runs up the stairs at full speed. The dog was small but fierce. Suddenly, I, clear as day, heard a gravelly voice at the top of the stairs say, "Bad doggy." The voice was deep and masculine. I went upstairs because I was certain nobody else was supposed to be there. I looked around and there was nobody in sight. The dog was still barking at something that I couldn't see. She was just barking at an empty hallway. That's when I heard footsteps walking away from us down the hall and into my aunt's bedroom. I could hear the footsteps, but I couldn't see anyone making them. I noped the hell out of that house with the dog and went outside in my car. The dog and I slept there for the night. I'm not entirely sure what I experienced that night, but I definitely believe in the paranormal now. I never told my aunt about what happened, but apparently my great-uncle, her husband, had died in that house a few months after I was born. I never knew him, but I'm willing to bet that that was him. The gravelly voice I heard that night. Story 9. I was always on the fence about ghosts because there's no scientific evidence of them being real, and I was going through a big question phase with religion/afterlife at that time anyway. But my family moved into an old farmhouse when I was 12. This was a very old farmhouse with a build date around the Civil War. The original owner's name was still on the old barn out back, and we found numerous antiques built into the walls when we completely renovated the place. A few odd things happened after we first moved in, but distinct things started happening to myself when I turned 16. But never to my sister, until she turned 16 too. The most prominent memory I have. The upstairs consisted of 2 bedrooms. One bedroom was the room at the top of the stairs, and the second was in a separate room just to the left of the top of the stairs. I had the private room, and my sister's room was the landing. When someone walked up the stairs, it was very distinct. You could hear each individual step, and the creaks got louder as the person approaching got closer. So one night, I'm sitting on my bed watching TV or something, and I hear my sister come up the steps and go lay on her bed. So I start talking to her. When she doesn't answer me, I get annoyed and go into her room. Only she's not there. My mind was blown because I know I heard her. I call for her and she had only been downstairs the entire time. We never felt threatened, but it did seem like this entity liked picking only on women. Even my mother, who absolutely does not believe in ghosts, had to admit some odd things had happened. I think the funniest was having my ponytail pulled while I was doing the dishes. I don't know why it was so funny, it just cracked me up that whatever it was felt like playing with my hair. Story 10. So my grandma used to live with me. She was in the room next to mine and would get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, which is in my room. There's a drop from her room to mine, so we put a nightlight outside of the bathroom so she could see the way. It was like this for about 12 years. Only a few days after she had passed away, I was in my bed with my cat and dog reading a book or something. I remember my cat and dog both waking up and looking at the nightlight. My cat got up and went to the light, pawing at it and making noises. My dog just stayed still, not barking. I would grab him so he would calm down or go to sleep, but he never took his eyes off that spot. That's when I saw what I can only say looked like light bend around the nightlight. I was positive it was my grandma coming back to use the bathroom and or check on me and the house. To this day, she died about 5 years ago, I still have that nightlight there, and I turn it on every night for her. I haven't seen her or experienced anything like it again, but I'm sure she's still around. Of course you haven't seen her again. She's only gonna really freak you out when you decide to stop using the nightlight. Continuing to use it is a good call, OP. Don't get haunted. Story 11. When I was in my late 20s, I was dating my girlfriend, soon-to-be wife. We'd been together for a while. One summer, July 3rd, her sister was abducted and unalived by a group of 6 men. All the men were eventually caught and tried. The trials and the aftermath for the family were devastating and debilitating for them for many, many years. Fast forward 3 months after the funeral. I arrived at my girlfriend's house to wait for her to get off from her job as a nurse at the local hospital. Neither of her parents were home. Just me alone in the house. So I went into the family room, turned on the TV, sat down on the couch, got comfortable, and began to watch. Clear as a bell, I heard my girlfriend's sister's voice in my right ear just off my shoulder call my name. I turned to look at the seat next to me, and of course, there was nobody there. I stared at the spot in the couch next to me for a long while. Feeling a bit uneasy, I turned off the TV and went outside to wait on the porch. Story 12. My aunt used to live above a convenience store. It was a duplex and had a mudroom that connected the front doors to each apartment. The other apartment was empty and unlocked, so my cousins and I would hang out in there. One night we were playing hide and seek in the empty apartment. My cousin and I are running from the seeker, and the hallway door slams shut in front of us. We freak out and end the game because we are too scared. We tell our parents, and my aunt happens to have a night vision baby camera. She sets it up in the living room of the empty apartment, and we can all see it on the TV in her house. We're watching it for about 10 minutes. Dust is flying everywhere and nothing is happening. Out of the darkness, a Pepsi can rolls up and hits the base of the camera. Everybody is like, WTF, this is haunted. I never went up the stairs alone to get to her house again. I was too freaked out. About 3 years ago, the entire building burned down. Unfortunately, I don't know the cause. Story 13. I lived in a haunted house for basically all of my life. It used to scare the heck out of me when I was little, but I basically just got desensitized to it. We always experienced hearing footsteps. Voices upstairs when everyone was downstairs, dogs following nothing around the room, typical ghost stuff. Some of the stranger experiences include my grandma seeing her mother in her room at night, my mom seeing a ball of light floating in our hallway, my brother and I separately heard fingernails tapping on the walls of our bedrooms, and when we called our mom in to listen to the sounds, they would stop, and then as soon as she left, it would start again. We experienced this at different times. My brother was for a week or so, and then me, and without knowing that the other one was having the same experience. I had a desk toy in my room that had a little foam ball hanging from a chain on it. My cousin and I were playing video games, and the ball randomly bounced like someone had tapped it from below. The kicker was when my mom started feeling like something was climbing into bed with her. She describes it like a dog trying but failing to climb up on the foot of the bed. She thought it was my dad moving his feet, but then she felt it when he wasn't there and she was wide awake. So she knew it wasn't him. She kept this story to herself. And then a few days later, my uncle stayed the night in the guest room and described the exact same thing. At that point, my mom waited for a day that everyone was out of the house. She opened up the windows and told the spirit that it either had to leave or move on. It wasn't allowed to bother us anymore. Since then, we've gone from activity every day to one-off experiences every few months. We've been told by several people who have slept in the guest room and had nightmares about it that there is a portal in the closet of our guest room. Sometimes I think that spirits just pass through occasionally and cause a flurry of activity. Story 14. When I was around, let's say, 8 years old and my brother was 6, we'd been playing video games in my room while my dad and mom watched football downstairs. For a while, we had lots of fun. That was until I had a really bad chill down my spine. I shrugged it off before I noticed my brother get a chill as well. He continued playing the game, so I just thought if he isn't worried about it, then neither should I. Everything went smoothly. Well, not for long. My brother paused the game. "Do you hear that?" he asked. I then heard a humming sound of what seemed to be a little girl. I nodded. The humming, right? I asked him, and he nodded as well. The humming was coming from the hallway right outside of our room. We began to be very nervous because me and my brother were the only children in the house. The door was shut, thankfully, so we didn't see anything. After a few seconds of the humming, it stopped, and we heard footsteps from the attic. The thing about the attic, though, is that nobody ever really goes up there. And at the time, neither me nor my brother had ever been up there, and my parents only went up there once each. Once the footsteps stopped and nothing else happened, we opened the door to see only the hallway. The next day, we told our parents in great detail what had happened, and they did the whole parents thing saying, "Oh, you probably just heard us. It was your imagination." Needless to say, if I didn't believe in ghosts before then, I did after.